Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. San Francisco Public Library acknowledges that the land where we are gathered today is the traditional homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. Let's collectively give thanks and respect to the Ohlone people by taking care of the earth, the animals, and one another. We acknowledge that the non-Ohlone residents are guests on this occupied land, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, learn, and play here. We promise to uplift and respect the Ohlone people and their history and their work. Special thanks to the unseen SFPL staff whose labor makes all of our work possible: media services, custodial and building maintenance, and our security team. None of this would be possible without them. Thank you all for joining us today for a very special interactive lecture performance based on the new book, Silencing the Drum: Religious Racism and Afro-Brazilian Sacred Music. We're honored to have Dr. Umi Vaughan with us. Dr. Vaughan is an independent artist, scholar, and former professor of Africana Studies at California State University, Monterey Bay. He holds a PhD in cultural anthropology from the University of Michigan, and his work explores music and dance traditions across the African diaspora. He is also the author of 2 acclaimed books on Cuban music and culture, and today he shares his latest work co-authored with Dr. Daniela Boaz. Today's event will feature a dynamic presentation and conversation about Brazil's rich African heritage and the challenges faced by African Brazilian sacred music, brought to life with live drumming, song, and dance. After the performance, book sales and signing will continue just outside the Corette lobby. We'll see you out there. Thank you, everyone. Please welcome Umi Vaughan.
The drum speaks. Tambo, the beat of life that always goes on. Percussive spirit of sound. Ingoma zonza gizonza ka. The drum speaks. Tambo que fala. Fala que faz. Words that work. Conjuring cadence. All over the world, in joy and pain, people move, people live, people love to the beat. From Imbanza, Congo, Alada and Old Oyo, on to Sao Salvador, da Bahia de Todos os Santos. Olha Bahia. Rio de Janeiro, São Luís de Maranhão, and Oakland. Where and what next? There are meetings at crossroads. Beauty is born. Journeys come full circle. We celebrate the continuity of life. We fight for our lives through the drum. Before we enjoy conversation and some ideas and inspiration, I would like to have a moment of silence for some musical giants, some cultural giants and friends who we lost recently. I'm thinking of Angie Stone. I'm thinking of Roy Ayers, Roberta Flack. I'm thinking of our great friend, Rashad Pridgeon, Soul Nubian. I'm thinking of all the loss that the world is experiencing right now, from Gaza to our own personal lives. Let's have a moment of silence in honor of our own capacity to resist and, at the end of all things, to love. A moment of silence. Ombo gira jamukange, aya, olele. Ombo gira jamukange, ombo gira kuja kuja. Ombo gira jamukange, aya, olele. Ombo gira jamukange, aya, olele. Ombo gira jamukange, aya, olele. Ombo gira In September of 2008, a religious community outside of Iturama, one of the main cities of Minas Gerais state in Brazil, they were hosting an initiation ceremony. Neighbors of the terreiro called authorities to complain about supposed noise pollution due to the playing of sacred drums known as atabaque. The drums that we have here represent those three drums. The one that is officially an atabaque is this one. Upon receiving this call, several police cars arrived at the terreiro, seized the drums, and issued a citation to the religious leader, Pai Diego. The devotees were unable to complete the initiation ceremony underway, which cost them about $20,000 US in wasted food, wasted ceremonial clothing, and fees for ritual officiants. The atabaque, which are not supposed to be touched by people who aren't sworn to the drum and initiated to handle them, were kept in an evidence locker at the police station for 15 days before authorities finally returned them. Pai Diego was never compensated for the cost of the aborted ceremony nor the emotional distress of the invasion. This is just one example of a common problem in Brazil. Prejudiced persons are characterizing Afro-Brazilian sacred music as a form of moral and or environmental pollution, and committing acts of physical and institutionalized violence in an effort to silence Afro-Brazilian sacred religious communities. The book that we're presenting today, Silencing the Drum, explores the role of sacred music in Afro-Brazilian religions, and it gives detailed accounts of religious racism connected to music, particularly in relation to the drum. What we're arguing is that if these cases of people taking drums away, destroying drums, lodging false, kind of spurious noise complaints, if we don't stop this, then an important cultural legacy, a world treasure, could be changed forever, if not totally lost. So what we're gonna do today,
For those who don't know, we're going to talk a little bit about candomblé as a religious philosophy and practice, and then we're going to hear some of the drum rhythms that really support the practice itself. Okay? Let's give a round of applause for my co-author. She's not here, Dr. Danielle Boaz. Dr. Boaz is a lawyer and historian at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. If you check out the book and look on the back cover, she maintains a database that logs and categorizes by location and type all instances of reported religious racism against candomblé and other Afro-Brazilian religions. What we found in our research is that over time, the specific state authorities, whether Portuguese colonial authorities or dictatorship time government or more recent Bolsonaro governments, recent authorities, laws, and mechanisms have shifted, but the energy and end goal of oppressing Black folks and eradicating their music and religions has remained eerily consistent. How many of us here know about candomblé? Raise your hand if you know about candomblé. Beautiful. So then we know that candomblé is a religious tradition in Brazil that takes important elements from various African sources and recombines them with indigenous sources with some influence from Portuguese or from Catholic principles as well. Enslaved people from the Bantu region of West Central Africa, nations such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon, Congo, Angola. People from this area arrived in Brazil as early as the start of the 1500s. These people would form what's called the Candomblé Angola nation. Can you say that? Angola. Candomblé, as the word itself, comes from Kikongo or Kimbundu and means black, preto. So Candomblé, black, became the name of these reimagined African religions in Brazil. The 18th century saw Bay-speaking people from the empire of Dahomey arrive. They formed the Candomblé Jeje nation. Can you say that? Jeje. In the early 19th century, the effects of civil war brought people from the Oyo Empire and surrounding territories in the modern-day nation of Nigeria to Brazil, and they founded what's called the Ketu nation. Can you say that? Ketu. Okay? Each group maintained connections to languages, musical practices, and rituals brought from Africa and adapted for use in Brazil. In some cases, African deities and ideas get disguised and influenced by Catholic ideology and symbols, as well as blended with indigenous ones. So you have an Orisha, like the one Shango from Nigeria, known to represent justice, the king of the drum, the king of magic, gets hidden behind San Jerome or San João in Brazil, right? Gary Edwards and John Mason, two of my favorite mentors, list several basic beliefs of the Yoruba people which fit more or less to describe the beliefs and practices of each of the three Candomblé nations. One, there is a God who created and controls the universe and all that's contained therein. There are selected forces of nature called Orisha, Nkisi, or Voduns, along with a plethora of other kind of names depending on the various African religions that exist in Brazil. These forces deal with the affairs of humankind on earth and govern the universe. These folks in Candomblé believe that spirit lives on after death and can reincarnate back into the world. They believe that ancestor spirits have power over those who remain on earth and so must be remembered, appeased, honored, and consulted by the living. Think Day of the Dead. Think about that plate that you put aside or that candle you light at Thanksgiving or Christmas, right? They believe in divination, that is, communicating with ancestors, spirits, divinities, or other sacred entities using mediumship or rituals, employing tools such as seeds, nuts, chains, shells. They believe in the use of offerings and animal sacrifice to elevate their prayers to the divinities, spirits, and ancestors. I always like to pause here because this is a point of criticism that the colonizer gaze or the colonizer mind likes to levy at candomblé, and cousin religions like Santeria or Vodun, this notion of animal sacrifice. I see it, and the people, the communities themselves see it as a way to acknowledge the cycle of life. This idea that an animal is going to perish so that I might eat, right, and continue living, right? This is kind of the opposite, and a prayer is said, a moment of acknowledgement happens, kind of similar to when halal meat is created or kosher meat, that kind of an idea, like the sacredness of eating, right? Sacrifice and eating. It's the polar opposite of what many of us Americans do. We want to eat those nuggets, but we don't care where they come from, right? So I'll leave that there. They believe in the ability of rituals and unseen forces to impact the world. They believe in the ritual use of medicinal herbs. They believe that ritual song and dance are mandatory components of worship. And they believe that through mediumship, through receiving the spirit in one's actual physical body, we are able to commune with higher forces, with God Almighty, right? The drums that we just saw played are part of the vehicle, the technology used to kind of crack open that space for one dimension to commune with the other. The three drums are called so. The smallest one is known as lay. Sai, could you please demonstrate just the sound of the lay? It's the highest pitched drum. It's the highest pitched drum. The second drum is called humpin. Can you say that? Humpin. A little bit lower of a pitch drum. The lead drum in this case is known as hum. Can you say that? Hum. The lay and the humpin are both supporting drums, whereas the hum is the leader. The hum is the one that determines what rhythm to play, the tempo, as well as the intensity. These drums can shout and scream. They can whisper. They can cajole. They can tease. They can insult. So this notion of, that some of us have in the drum circle, that you go and you do whatever you want to, you bang on those drums. No, we speak with the drums. There's a great amount of restraint and understanding and intention that goes behind the playing. A great scholar by the name of Amanda Ville-Pasteur has a book about Nigerian bata drumming, a cousin to this, that she calls ancient text messaging of the Yoruba, right? That's how precise the messaging is, right? I mentioned that the first wave of Africans to arrive in Brazil were from the Congo, Bantu region, speaking languages like Kikongo, etc. Those empires had been in relationship with Portugal since the end of the 1400s. There's a tradition in the Congo-Angola nation of Candomblé to sing to Congo spirits and also indigenous spirits. So we're going to offer a song right now over a rhythm called Congo de Ouro that is calling out to a spirit called boiadeiro, like a cowboy rural spirit of the indigenous tradition. So a Congo song, a Congo rhythm using Portuguese now, okay? Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia, foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia, montado no meu cavalo, com meu chapéu de lado. Quando eu saía, minha mãe me abençoava.
Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia. Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia. Montado no meu cavalo, com meu chapéu de lado.
Quando eu saía, minha mãe me abençoava. Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia. Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia, montado no meu cavalo, com meu chapéu de lado. Quando eu saía, minha mãe me abençoava.
Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia. Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia. Montado no seu cavalo, com meu chapéu de lado. Quando eu saía, a minha mãe me abençoava.
Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia. Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia. Montado no meu cavalo, com meu chapéu de lado. Quando eu saía, minha mãe me abençoava.
Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia. Foi nesse passo que eu saí da minha aldeia. Montado no seu cavalo, com meu chapéu de lado. Quando eu saía, minha mãe me abençoava.
In the Jeje context, and also in the Ketu context, these ceremonies where the drum is played and people come to receive the drum and be healed, they call those shire, which comes from a Yoruba kind of contraction to do good, to work good, shire, okay? The spirits come and possess certain adepts who serve as mediums who communicate with devotees. They offer advice on how to solve problems, whether economic, social, physical health problems. And it's a really beautiful thing. Sometimes probably misunderstood, but if anyone's ever been to a black church and seen somebody catch the spirit, it's similar. If anybody's ever been to Egypt and seen some of the Sufis swing and sway and, you know, catch the spirit that way, very similar kind of ideas, right? Because of the well-being that the drums generate, from colonial times on to the present, to attack the drummer has been a kind of first move in the playbook of how to sweep black people off of their feet. If you read our book, Silencing the Drum, we document laws passed by the Portuguese colonial government, passed by early iterations of the early governments in the Brazilian Republic, and more so, instances over the past 10 years of egregious religious intolerance. Some types of examples that you might find are a woman finding someone knock on their door, yes? And be greeted by evangelical drug traffickers. Talk about an oxymoron. These are people who go into jail and get radicalized. They come to believe that the poverty that they experienced growing up is a product of their families having practiced African religions, right? And so when they return to their communities, they kind of have a self-hating rage against, you know, their grandmothers, their aunties who are practicing these centuries-old traditions, right? And so this person would say, you know, we know that you guys are playing drums here, and if you continue, you'll be killed, right? And the kind of resistance or the kind of rootedness and determination that we also found and documented is that this woman said, okay, of course you're not going to say no because they will really kill you. Or you can't go to the police either because they don't care. So this woman got speakers, the biggest ones she could find, and put them outside the house and played gospel music so that inside you wouldn't hear the din of the drums, right? So we document in our book these kinds of stories of resilience, of ingenuity, ingeniousness, right? For people to hold on to their traditions. It kind of begs the question for each of us, what are the parts of our culture and our society that we refuse to let go in difficult times? Like, what lengths are we able to go to in love to hold on, right? And so our book documents all kinds of instances of people doing that around the drum in Brazil. One of the reasons that Europeans have been intimidated by African musical practices is because they were unable to decipher the meaning. They were unfamiliar with the significance of the performance of the rhythms and the songs that accompanied the drumming. because they were typically in African languages. This echoes with something that happened recently in Rio de Janeiro around the 2025 Carnival celebration. The pageantry that happened, that the whole world tunes in to watch, became a de facto protest against religious intolerance, as almost all the major schools presented themes that had to do with candomblé, had to do with, Angola, Ketu, Jeje, had to do with Jurema, had to do with Umbanda, some element of Afro-diasporic religion in Brazil. Throwing into relief this idea that Brazil presents itself, for tourists at least, as a nation that has samba, that plays the beautiful game that Pelé brought with its jinga and its African spirit, but at the same time is allowing fatal attacks to happen against the religious tradition, right? And so that carnival celebration kind of throws into relief the hypocrisy and the kind of cognitive dissonance that a lot of the world is living in right now, where we love Black culture, but we don't love Black people, that we want Black culture for entertainment, but we're afraid of it when it's used away from the kind of mainstream gaze as potentially a place where resistance can grow, where people can hatch plans, right? Kind of a thing. Indeed, we know that music played a key role in some of the most well-known rebellions in the Americas. Stonewall Rebellion, 1739, South Carolina, right? The drum was involved in that. The laws that came across South Carolina and the rest of the South after that were banning drums, right? The Haitian Revolution, later in the 1700s into the start of 1800s. Doti Boukman and them, they had drums, right? So the drum has always been a kind of technology of invocation, self-defense, in a figurative, but also in a real sense. You want to dance, Ogun? So all of the music that we are performing now, we're doing renditions for you of tracks that accompany the book, performed by master percussionists who are candomblecistas. So, we're doing our best to give you just a flash of what you experience if you make it to Brazil or if you listen to the recording even, okay? Ogun is the god of iron, so taxi drivers, pilots, butchers, locksmiths. Ogun is the deity that has to do with technology, that has to do with medicine, but also struggle. So we point to Ogun a lot in the book because this is a time of struggle. Notice that the dances and songs here are a kind of performative or performed good book. There ain't no Bible per se, but when the community wants to learn and teach about important values like justice or like sharing or like chants, they're performed, right? And so notice the dancer that we're going to bring out, he's going to be giving gestures that represent a machete to open the way, to lance an infection so the infection can come out and you can be healed again, right? So these are instructive poems in motion. Shalare ogun oni de oregede ogun oni de okoro oni de oregede Shalare ogun oni de oregede ogun oni de oregede Shalare ogun oni de oregede ogun oni de okoro oni de oregede Shalare ogun oni de oregede Yes. Samad Rahim Guerra. So one of the most ironic things about attacks against candomblé music is how much of Brazilian popular culture and popular music draws from it, right? So if anybody watches the FIFA World Cup and there's a commercial for Guaraná, they might have the Ijexá rhythm playing, which comes out of the religious communities and has been popularized in songs by Caetano Veloso, by Gilberto Gil, by Seu Jorge. Name your favorite Brazilian singer, MC D2. And they've drawn upon these rhythms, right? And so what would happen if people stopped having access to those spaces to learn percussion? Brazilian music, artists like Carlinhos Brown, who wrote the foreword for our book, who's a percussionist and composer, we would never have artists like him, right? One of the things that we draw attention to in the book is this tension. Brazil is shooting itself in the foot by allowing this music to be attacked. We also point to the extreme virtuosity that the musicians of candomblé demonstrate. Each musician, each drummer, especially the lead drummer, weaves his style over a long apprenticeship by taking a little bit from this instructor, a little bit from the other instructor, listening somewhat to the ancestors, making some mistakes, and kind of creating what will be their unique voice on the drum. So we're gonna kind of demonstrate that a little bit now. But before we do, I wanna teach a song that we'll sing together. The first part of the song goes, Iye, ye ye shorodo. Iye ye shorodo. Iye ye shorodo. So these songs happen in a kind of call and response thing, right? What I'll sing as the lead for now is different from what you guys will sing. You guys are going to sing that, and I'll sing something different. Iye ye shorodo, oh no ma fefe shorodo. Iye ye shorodo. Okay, so now Robert and I are going to demonstrate just some of the different licks that happen on the main drum.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, solo do. Oh, no, ma, bebe, solo do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, solo do. Oh, no, ma, bebe, solo do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, solo do. Oh, no, ma, bebe, solo do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, solo do. Oh, no, ma, bebe, solo do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, solo do.
Epa. So one of the reasons that these gatherings are important is because we enter into a think tank together. We enter into a space where we can try and find concrete solutions to this urgent humanitarian crisis. Somebody in here might know somebody, the right person, right, to get to Michelle Obama, or to get to somebody who has some money, who has a connection to help bring an end to a situation where people are actually losing their lives over this, right? So we're gonna shift gears right now. We're gonna invite Brother Samad. He's gonna engage me in a few questions, and then we're gonna open it up to the rest of the audience. Is that okay with you guys? Yeah. Let's give a round of applause to the musicians. I think they're gonna bring some chairs out here for us.
It's a pleasure to be here, yes. What a momentous occasion. I do want to add, so when I arrived here, I didn't know this, but it is this brother's 50th birthday today. Yes. So what a momentous occasion.
Man, you guys are a great gift. Thanks for coming out and celebrating with me. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for your work. Before we begin our conversation, I do want to share just an anecdotal story about how we met, which I find to be really amusing and really ties the pieces together. So I had the privilege of traveling to Cuba in 2003. I was there with my mother. We went to La Habana, and I was walking down this really big intersection, and Umi saw me before I saw him. I was wearing Dickies pants, a tank top, and some huaraches, some sandals that I got in the Mission District. And I had this big old straw hat on, something that you might not find the typical person in La Habana wearing. And Umi spotted me from across the street, and he was like, hey, yeah, you, hey. And I looked up, and I see this brother over there trying to flag me down across the street. And somehow we met. Either I went over there, he went over to where I was, and we introduced ourselves. And he was like, "You from Oakland, huh?" I was like, out of all places, this brother knew I was from Oakland. And that just kick-started our relationship. It turns out that he knew my mother. My mother is very much a fan of Umi's family legacy. If you don't know, Umi is the brilliant son of Deborah Vaughan. And she founded Dimensions Dance Theater, renowned black dance company. And so, yeah, it was just a beautiful occasion for us to meet in Cuba in that way. And I've been a fan of your work and really see you as someone who's been a fine mentor of mine. So thank you. I would love to jump into some of the questions that I've put together. The first question is, Fred Hampton Jr. once said that people turn to or become dedicated servants of the cause out of inspiration, aspiration, or desperation. What motivates you to invest your time and energy in this work?
Well, you mentioned this, my mom. So I grew up, going to rehearsals and, between drummers and sitting on dancers' laps and stuff and hearing the laughter and kind of understanding the warmth and the power of what they were doing. I didn't know, but I could feel that it meant something important. The way that people would hug her and people would be smiling in the audience, that it was more than entertainment. I learned later that, you know, their whole legacy coming from Catherine Dunham and Ruth Beckford and these people who weave together different strands of African diaspora culture with the purpose of like healing us in Oakland and in New Orleans and, you know, bringing us together. So my aspiration was to do something like that with my life, you know? And then as I've gotten further and further in my career and just looked at the world, you know, it's a way to fight, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, to fight for the right thing. We look around the world and we see so much just not the right thing happening, you know what I mean? And so to have gatherings like this or have a book where I try and put together some truth, you know what I mean? Backed up by facts, backed up or wrapped in beauty too, you know, in hopes that that can like, you know, be a buttress, be a kind of weapon, open somebody's eyes, inspire somebody else, you know, shut somebody else up, you know, whatever the weapon needs to do, you know what I mean, has been, you know, a reaction to a certain desperation that I see. Like I feel myself, you know, I write books, I perform music, I do visual arts. A couple weeks ago, I just went out in the middle of the night, damn near naked, and did a mural on the wall in front of my house. Said, what's next? You know what I mean? You know, so desperation too.
So considering your earliest memories of sitting on the laps of artists and dancers and drummers, how has your artistic process evolved over the years, considering that aspiration and desperation are two themes that have really developed you into the artist that you are? I mean, I see you as someone who's a very much embodied scholar. I mean, even in the way that you entered the space through music and dance, as opposed to lights turning on and you're at the podium, but your entrance into your scholarly work already it kind of lends itself to an alternative view in terms of what it can be to be a scholar, what it can mean to be a scholar. So what is your artistic process?
First of all, it's about listening, like listening to what I hear people say, you know, in the streets of Oakland, or if I'm in Havana, or if I'm in Salvador. Like, what are people saying about themselves? What are the Orishas saying to the people? What is the TV saying to the people? Like, just listening, you know, and kind of interpreting and trying to let it marinate within me. Listening to other authors, you know, listening to Du Bois and listening to Ellison and Robert Farris Thompson and Walter Mosley, and kind of letting that sit and marinate within me. And then listening to myself, listening to my own madness. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the work, you know, recently has been allowing myself to be ridden by spirit. You know what I mean? Like, anybody know the wonderful choreographer Adia Whitaker with Ashe Dance Company? Oh, man. Come on. She has some really innovative choreography that incorporates technology and all kind of wild stuff. And I went to the show, and I was flabbergasted that I had been waking up in the middle of the night doing the choreography. I was like, oh, whoa. You know what I mean? I was in the audience like, wait a minute. Am I getting punked? You know what I mean? But listening to, you know, these stories that are coming to me and like making sure to like get out the way has been a big part of the process. And then trusting myself. And then another thing is like gathering the troops, right? The soldiers of peace that can be with me, you know what I mean? Has been part of the process as well.
I love that. One of the things that stands out to me about what you said is getting out of the way. Sometimes as artists, we do have to get out of our own way so that we can get in the way of creating something that speaks to us. What is some advice that you might offer us as an audience, those of us who are interested in researching or even writing books about the African diaspora? Maybe some of us are artists, practicing artists, and we've experienced standing in our own ways, and maybe we need a little bit of guidance in terms of how to move forward.
I would say take your time, you know, realize that it takes some time to gain a community's trust or to read enough about something, especially if you're not from there, to have any footing to really speak, you know what I mean? Work hard, create, get your right mentors, get your right peers who are studying with you to keep you honest as far as, what you need to work on. Stay humble, right? Also, though, know when to speak up, and then also know when to shut up too. You don't want to go to Brazil telling people about Brazil. You know what I mean? But and know what your role or your lane is in the thing. Like for me, my lane is to be a connector, interpreter. One of the books is available outside. It's called Rebel Dance, Renegade Stance. It's about Cuba. But one of the critique of the book was like, I don't know if this guy is a scholar, if he's some kind of street thug or player, or if he's an activist. I was like, yeah, that's about right. Because I try and write in a way that is accessible to, the man or the woman in the streets, a lay person. If you love ideas, if you can read somewhat, you can get into the book, Yeah.
Okay. My last question might allow you to move a little bit more. You've already blessed us on the stage with your movement, your singing, your drumming. Is there a movement or rhythm that you feel expresses or conveys the essence of your written work? I'm sure, in your trips to Brazil, you've witnessed a lot, and I see you as someone who does connect communities outside of the country and within the United States. But yeah, a movement that maybe you've gathered from all your travels that you feel really expresses or conveys the essence of your work.
Well, two things come to mind. There's a terreiro outside of Salvador that's called Casa do Mensageiro. And this gentleman named Pai Riquelme, kind of a young Babalorixá. And I was at a shide at their for Legba, trickster deity, at their terreiro one time. And they were playing for Xangô. And they brought out these two guys. These brothers looked like they had to be football players or basketball players or something. They was about like 6'5", 6'6", big. And they came out and they're just sitting, chilling, like we are. At a certain point, though, like they start to feel the spirit, and they do a thing where they kind of bend forward and shiver, but it's like they became 10 times bigger. So they're already 6'7", and at a certain moment, the beat hits, and they're like, and it was like, oh my goodness. And in terms of my work, there's some certain moments where your experience, some kind of aha moment, fills you up with a different sense of what you're doing. And it feels like hawking up like that. Right? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, beautiful anecdotal story. I think one of the things that I'm hearing you say is, or even ask, is what hulks us up? What is it about our culture, our song, our dance that hulks us up, that gets us amped up? And it looks different across different cultures. Thank you. Thank you.
So now we can have some questions from the audience. Sound okay? Go ahead, brother. You have a question.
So I have more of a comment. So today's my 49th birthday.
Okay,
yeah.
Congratulations.
And my dad was a santero, and I'm from the Caribbean. So
bless Earth Strong,
brother.
brother.
Tamborista también, so I feel like
bless
we're
Earth
kin
Strong,
that
bro.
way.
Blessed Earth Strong to you.
Yeah, give thanks, brother, give thanks. But I just wanted to say you made two particularly relevant points as far as the attack on the culture and the seizure of the drums, right? And for my culture, one of the examples of that is the development of the cajon, right? Because they weren't able to play, so they'd be sitting on their boxes that they collect their fruits and vegetables, orange crates or whatever, and they'd be playing. And when Master came along, we're just, here working, we're not playing. So that's a particularly relevant point. And my dad was a santero also, and I always saw the ritual sacrifice, because it would happen in my home growing up as a celebration of life, which is really important. Because the Haitian Revolution, right? Yeah. Was a way that they used. So the Cuban Revolution, they employed a form of psychological terrorism against the powers that be, and that they knew how to work the plants and the herbs, right? And then Massa would all of a sudden come down with a certain disease or a certain sickness, and they didn't know where it was coming from. So they turned around and took that practice and demonized it, if you would, right? So there were portrayals of one of the greatest evils in modern history, took the people that were fighting against it and then flipped it on that and made that a form of devil worship and evil, right? So that's particularly relevant in today's political climate as well.
Right.
Because that's going on right now today in politics.
Where freedom fighting becomes illegal, right?
Right, right. So I just kind of wanted to make that connection. I feel like those 2 points you made were really, really relevant points.
Gracias, mano.
Ya tú sabes.
Xiomara, you have a question?
Hi. I'm curious more about your interaction with the music, with the dance, with the drumming. How do you juggle all of them? How do you juggle all of them? The music, the dancing, the language, culture?
I first went to Brazil in 2007. I'm a member of the Caribbean Studies Association, which usually has its meetings on islands like San Andres, the Colombian island, or TNT, or at UE in Jamaica or somewhere, or Rio Piedras in Puerto Rico. But sometimes they have them in kind of Caribbean tangential spots like New Orleans. And in this particular year, they had it in Brazil. And my dad and I went. We had a chance to meet Maestela. There's a great story where, this Maestela's like, the Pope is like the white male Maestela. That's her spiritual, And she was telling my dad, oh, you have a beautiful spiritual aura. And my dad is an ingenuous guy from Compton. He said, yeah, so do you. It was beautiful. But it was an introduction to Brazil, this beautiful spiritual place, I determined to learn Portuguese. I already spoke Spanish, so I studied. I went back the next summer. There were some members of the group Ile Aye living in the Bay Area, and I asked them who should I study percussion with, and they introduced me to the great Mario Pam. He is one of the musical leaders of Ile Aye. He was the musical director of the recordings that accompany the book. And so he and I brought him here in 2014 and again in 2017 to do a project with John Santos and myself called Drum Talk, Rhythms from Cuba and Brazil. He's going to be the musical director of a secular music program, project that I'm doing called Gringo Magia. We're doing samba and kind of world music. And so, these musical connections have just been going on since 2008 and getting stronger and stronger. I'm practicing and, putting in my 2 cents. And so just it's been cooking up. So that's how it all kind of blends together, Languages is one of the things that I love. Those first moments when a new way of speaking starts to roll out natural is ecstasy. You know what I mean? The next I want to get Wolof or Yoruba. Another question.
I do have a question from a card. What is the best song to sing that brings inspiration to work to fight against oppression in the world?
Oh man, I wouldn't know the answer to that. That there's so many songs, so there's no right answer to that. The answer that I would offer is the Shalade Ogun Onire, the Ogun song. Any song for Ogun could work. Also, the Orishas offer, the kind of straightforward, obvious meaning and value, but they also have like, surprising aspects too. So Oshun, who is a feminine deity associated with the river, with sweetness, with fertility, with commerce, is also a warrior in her own way. There's a story in which, Ogun has lost his mind in the forest and they send her to kind of chill him out with honey. Or there's another story where a fight is happening and, some people are fighting with machetes or some people are firing arrows, etc. Oshun uses the mirror that at one moment she might use to reflect upon herself. She turns it and catches the light of the sun and blinds people and wages war in that way. So, there's so many songs that's like a trick question.
Dr. Vaughan, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm in deep gratitude, I made it to one of your book presentations. And thank you to all the performers, and thank you, Samad, for the great questions. So I had two questions. One was, I followed some of your research work, and you have this, it's like deep investigation, right down to the bottom of the ocean or the center of the earth. You go in deep, and you brought traditions from Oakland to share. You went in deep into Cuban culture, really deep, and for those of us who follow your research, just some gems sometimes that you can't find other places. As you've gone in deep into Brazilian culture and northeastern Brazilian culture and Negra culture in Brazil, how would you say it has, what is something that has transformed you from the beginning of your research until now? And it could be as an artist, as a musician, as in your spiritual practice, as an academic. I know you got a lot of layers going on, but what is something from when you started to now that has changed you? That's the first question. And then the second...
Let me answer that one first, because otherwise I'll get confused. That's a great question. I think that the idea that there's so much to know that you can't know it all, and that's okay, right? So, for example, having learned Cuban bata and gone through all that kind of stuff, then to step and get with these, Ogans and Alabés in Brazil, you know what I mean? They're like, hey, you want to do that? I'm like, oh. But still be able to play with some, with some heart, with some presence, you know what I mean? Like, not get scared away, because you're not going to never master something, but just kind of surrender yourself to be able to participate and confident that you can, with a good intention, always have something to offer, has been something that's been kind of a relief and a gift for me. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be the muckety of mucketies in order to be useful for the battle. You know what I mean? So yeah. So what's the second question, Baba?
And the second question, so I'm also from a diaspora culture, different one, but I got people all over the world, and wherever I go, I always find my people. So as the American cousin, right, in the African diaspora, what, in the circles that you're running in, what is your, how are you treated? What's your position? What's your place? How do you... Yeah,
Yuri, that's a wild question, and it shifts, you know what I mean? Sometimes, you'll be the brother who has, from a university platform or from just an American economic standpoint, a little bit more access or a little bit more pull to help make something happen, and that's welcome. I'm always down. Sometimes on the other side of it, people can kind of try and style you as you'll never know anything, or you're just trying to get rich off of us or something like that, you know what I mean? And what I found is that I don't fight that battle, you know what I mean? I just try and let the work be, So, but for the most part, it's love, you know what I mean? For the most part, it's love. Yeah. Good question, though. Here's one right there.
The persecutors in Brazil call themselves Christians.
Yeah.
And if you go back, way back in Christian history, for the first 4 centuries, Christians were basically pacifists. The Romans didn't try to recruit them too much to the army or anything like that because they knew that. And it only came at the time of Constantine, who had a dream that saw the letters IHS, which some Christians interpret as a shortening of Jesus, but also in Latin meant in hoc signo, in this sign. And in that sign was the idea that Constantine, if he evoked the Christian cross, would win military victories. And indeed they did. And he made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. And that historically fucked up Christianity more than anything ever, because it really was an ungodly merger. And it resulted ultimately in what those of us who are Christian and embarrassed with much of our history, most of our history, because it resulted in what we sometimes call the 3 M's, the military, the mercenary, and the missionary. And there was good done by missionaries in some ways, but it was all in that context. And I'm wondering if the Christians of Brazil, who are not part of these extreme evangelical Pentecostal sects, but people who maybe understand their tradition a little better, if they're doing anything to fight these real insults to religious liberty.
This is a wonderful question, and I think this is a next step in the research. The Christian folks that we had dialogue with are coming from a more common sense perspective of like, would Jesus do this? No. Would any decent person do this? No. But what I think could be useful is a kind of more theologically in-depth kind of discussion and presentation for Brazil from a Christian religious perspective, with kind of summaries of the history like the one you just gave, tied to today's encounters. I think that that's one of the next steps, and I know we've been talking. I think that we could write an article or something like along those lines that could be useful. Because I don't see Christian people talking about it in that sense. I see people saying like, those are your neighbors and, love thy neighbor, but kind of not going too much deeper than that in terms of the Christianness, you know what I mean? And I think those are great points that you raised. Thank you, Seth.
That was really an appropriate statement you made, because I'm playing hooky from a Christian church, fundamentalist Christian church. It's called Into Church. They're really good to us normally, but the reason why I stopped going there is because at the last meeting several weeks ago, a man stood up and said something political relating to veterans and the Vietnam War. Over in Vietnam, we call it the American War. And he was saying how almost 58,000 soldiers died in that war, American soldiers. And so people were all sad and feeling bad for him. But I don't know if he was a veteran or not. And then when I went up to talk about how many millions of Vietnamese died in that revolution/imperialistic war, which they called a police action, because in order to have a real war, Congress has the right to it and the authority to declare it, not the president. So they called it a police action, but it was really a war of genocide and ecocide. And anyways, they tried to stop me from going up and announcing that 2 million Vietnamese died, the wife of the pastor. And I was so upset about that. I did it anyways. I went up and just said that, but I'm not going back to that church. So I'm so glad that you brought up the goddess Oshun. I just looked her up on the internet. I'm glad that there are other deities that have, a scope of creationism, because really, if there is a war, a god or goddess, I wouldn't want them fighting each other.
Yes.
They're my creation. We're supposed to honor each other. We're god or goddess handiwork. Why would they? I mean, that God would just scratch their head, right? Seeing how we fight all over in the name of the god or goddess, that seems silly to me.
Thank you. Any last question or questions?
I have a question.
Sure, Robert.
Should I use the mic right here?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So we played the rhythm Ije Shah.
Yeah.
So like Umi, you talked about, was it Angola, Jeji, and Ketu, right? And then Ije Shah is like a fourth nation of Candomblé, right? It's like Fon or Ije Shah, and it's like a fourth nation that has kind of like mostly disappeared, right? Or like it's more rare. And so that's like a part of the culture for various reasons that has like gone away, right? Or it's more rare than it used to be, maybe. Are there other aspects of Candomblé, like these tangible things that are disappearing or going away due to
persecution and religious racism?
One thing that's happening is Christianity is borrowing elements of the religion in order to steal away adherence. So certain ritually prepared dishes like akaraje, known as akara in Nigeria, these cakes made out of mashed black-eyed peas, fried in palm oil and opened up and filled with all kind of delicious stuff, kind of like a snack, you know what I mean? They're making Jesus cakes now, right? Or different ritual baths with certain kind of herbs. The church is offering those baths now. Kind of as, kind of like putting, Jesus's birthday on the 25th of December, like rhymes with other practices, that kind of a thing to kind of guide people away from the traditional practice. So those are some things that are eroding perhaps slightly. And there's kind of a tension in terms of people's willingness to wear the garb, to wear white on Fridays. There's a movement now like, let's go back to wearing white on Fridays. Traditionally, candomblé practitioners on Fridays all wear white, just as a matter of course. And that had kind of eroded because somebody was, when the leader of your country or when a certain kind of okayness with disrespect becomes generalized, then you wear white on Friday and somebody might get in your face. You know what I mean? So people were kind of, not doing it as much. So those are some of the kind of things that are kind of being contested now. I don't know if I want to say that they're disappearing, but there's contestation. Mm-hmm.
I have a second question.
Sure.
In your book, several times you use the word adept, and not too many people in English use that word very much, and sometimes it's about fortune tellers and that kind of stuff. But I wonder if you could define it a little more talk about how people get into leadership in these Afro-Brazilian religions. Is there anything like a seminary or training programs, or is it more a sense of just somebody gets involved and becomes a leader?
This is an awesome question. The religious temples are known as tejeros. Can you guys say that? Tejero? Like a compound. They're organized around a religious leader, oftentimes a Black woman. This woman initiates junior priests who could replace her or branch off and establish their own tejeros in the future. Within the tejero, there are innumerable or many roles that you can be in and be an adept or a participant. I would say the adept, in the sense I'm using it, is participant or believer. In terms of your role in the religion, you could be a high priest and diviner, where you're throwing, 16 cowrie shells to know the will of the Orisha. You could be a master sacrifice artist, where you know how to wield the knife and take the ritual parts of the animals and prepare them and present them to the Orisha. You could be the master cook, who takes the parts of the animal and prepares the ritual meals. You could be the master drummer or the master singer. You could be the master person who repairs the drums. You could be the accountant of the tejero. You could be an abian, which is a person who's not initiated at all, but you could come and clean up because you just love it so much and you want to be around. So when I say adept, there's all different kind of roles. The original structure of the candomblé was like based on a family. So originally it would be in the tejero, kind of like the cabildos in Cuba, people from one family who were Yoruba from a particular, subgroup of the Yoruba. But then as generations passed, somebody who was Dahomey might just marry into that family or just by interest gravitate. White folks or mix, with white folks would become involved in the tejeros because of love, because of interest. Also, they could be adopted because of what protection they might bring in terms of the mainstream society. That person knew the mayor, and so they could go and make sure that the mayor wasn't going to come down and shut down the toke, the party this weekend, or allow it to go a few more hours. So, people's learning in the candomblé is by participation and over time. There's no formal school. They say that once you get really into the candomblé, you go to the Tejero and sometimes you don't come back for the rest of the day or for a few days. Like, so your friends and stuff who are not into that, they be like, man, come on, man. We're supposed to go party. You know what I mean? Like, nope. I gotta, I went to the Tejero. I thought I was gonna go and be there for a few hours, but they got me doing all this other stuff. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of an all immersive kind of experience where you learn by just, you didn't plan to be doing this, but go get those herbs. Go out and get sticks, and we're gonna make the Agi David, the sticks used to play the drums. Okay, it's gonna be all day. Yep, all day. So kind of a learning by doing, apprenticeship, observation, and instruction. You know what I mean? Like that. Well, I want to thank the San Francisco Public Library and Anissa Malady. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to, yes, this is a wonderful opportunity. The Court Auditorium, this is like City Lights Books or something, being part of the great conversation, presenting some of my work in an important community center. Thank you to the tech gentlemen who helped us bring the sound together. Thank you guys, great job. Thank you again to Robert Lopez, our lead drummer, Cy Thompson, Skylar Lee. Thanks to my brother, Samad Rahim Guerra, for joining me in conversation. And thanks to each and every one of you guys. I'm gonna, after whatever comments Anissa makes, I'm gonna meet you guys in the lobby to sign some books if you guys honor me by buying some. And then look out for new opportunities to share together. You can follow me on Instagram at Umi Vaughan, UMIVAUGHAN. And thank you for coming out. But as Anissa finishes up and as you guys start to move, the band is going to give us a little traveling music. So enjoy that as you go out, okay? Thank you very much.
And let's give it up for Umi. Ooh, happy birthday. Please know San Francisco Public Library has an art and music department, so we have all sorts of great research for you to do here. We have Umi's book, and thank you all for being here. You can sing all you want. Let's go. 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Umi. Whoop, whoop. Happy birthday to you. Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. It's your birthday. Hey, hey.